need to change so that the idea that domestic workers are part of the family does not undermine their fundamental right to decent work.
Work of equal value is a very important issue for the Swiss government. It's a question of justice towards women. It's also a question of a fair competition between companies. It can be accepted that companies which don't pay in a fair manner women have an advantage against the companies which respect the Equal Pay Act. And it's also very important for families because we see that in Switzerland some families are at risk of poverty. So it's very important that both members of a family get the right pay. And also it's an issue at not only at short term but also at long term, because we see that the pensions, the retirement pensions, are going to be affected. So it's a very bright issue. That's why our government has decided to engage itself in this issue. So first, we have good statistics. It's very important to have good statistics in order to know in what direction we are heading. And then we have developed a tool which is called Logib. It's a tool for companies to make self-analysis. It's very important that companies make the analysis. We have observed in Switzerland that a lot of companies don't know exactly what the situation of gender pay is. So they have to make the analysis. We also have noted that companies are pretty open to make the analysis, but they need a tool which is not too complicated to use. So that's why we have developed a tool. Then in the context of public procurement, we can make controls. Again, it's about fair competition. It cannot be accepted that a company gets a public procurement and doesn't respect the law about gender equal pay. And then we have also a charter. It's a very important charter for equal pay in the public sector. The public sector has to show the way. It's important that it shows that it respects equal pay, and then we can also ask that the private sector goes into the same direction. The first most important measure is a good education, I would say, but it's the case in Switzerland. And also women have a good education. We still say there is a gender pay gap. That's why we need first the law. We need a law which states very clearly that gender equal pay is not nice to have. It's a basic human right and economic right. And then also we need tools. We need pragmatic tools. I think it's very important. It helps the whole issue.
All doing? Well, I hope everyone still have enough energy for another half day, one afternoon. I'm sure you already had a good lunch. Yes? Right. So let's start with our afternoon session, which is the panel discussion. This is our last panel for the two days conferences. In life, we always wanted to demand for more choices for us as a woman, but for people in general. But the one thing that I don't like to have that many choice is food. The lunch, they have so many, there are 4 different stations. I just can't choose which one to eat. But in this afternoon, our session is on the pay gaps, the one things we don't understand, if we all work, why there is a gap of the payment that we receive. So to understand that, our last session for this afternoon is on the subject of closing the pay gap, what actually works from experience of our panelists, and will be chaired by Ms. Sandra Parker, Deputy Secretary Workplace Relation Economic Strategy from the Department of Employment Australia, Government of Australia. So we would like to invite her on stage, please, for chairing our session. Ms. Sandra Parker is the Deputy Secretary, Workplace Relation and Economic Strategy, as I mentioned. She facilitates job growth and workforce participating through workplace relation and work health and safety policy that promote fair, productive, and safe workplace. And she will be chairing our panelists, one of them named Sandra as well. So I would like to invite on stage our panelist, Ms. Sandra D'Amico, Vice President, Cambodian Federation of Employers and Business Association. She's also the Managing Director of HR in Cambodia, Myanmar. Can we also have on stage Ms. Lati Lita Gaga, the Vice President of Fiji Trade Union Congress? And Mr. Ngung Thak Thun, the Vice Director, Research Center for Female Labors and Gender. Last but not least, Ms. Manuel Tomei, Director, Condition of Work and Equity Department, ILO Geneva, Switzerland. So here are our chairs and our panelists. So without further ado, I would like to hand over now to Ms. Sandra for chairing the session, please.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to point out we're the black and white panel. Very coordinated. We organised that this morning.
Yes, thank you.
So just over the last few days, we've had some really interesting discussions on the key issues affecting women in the future of work. And it's fitting that we end the conference on closing the pay gap. The topic cuts across all issues we've discussed so far and significantly impacts women's experiences at work. And it is sobering that the ILO estimates it will take 70 years to close the global gender pay gap. So regardless of the way the pay gap is calculated, for example, weekly, hourly, average or median wages, it's evident in our region there remains a gap and we should address it. Comprehensive analysis, though, is required to understand what the gap is and where it exists. So we obviously know about pay gaps where men and women are performing like-for-like jobs, but we also have broader issues, organisation-wide pay gaps and, of course, labour force pay gaps. Now, while equal pay for work of equal value is central to closing the gender pay gap, it's just part of the solution. We all know, and we've all been talking over the last few days about how complex this is and that there are many factors that influence what happens. In terms of the data, the number of hours worked, labour market gender segregation, where people work, the impact of women's greater unpaid caring responsibilities and, of course, differences in education, work experience and seniority. And I think of real importance is what people have said, cultural views of women and women's worth. So without addressing all of the different ways men and women interact with the labour market, we're unlikely to close the gap, which is why the topics covered and the discussions at this conference are so important to addressing pay inequality. We know that men tend to work in higher paid professions and occupations. They also do significantly more paid overtime than women, thus they earn more. We know women do more unpaid labour at home. They take time out of work for maternity leave, caring responsibilities. They miss out on progressing to higher paid jobs during their career. So, of course, men undertake less unpaid labour at home. They progress faster and are available to take on more opportunities when they arise. So a critical issue in addressing the gender pay gap is paid work and care. More often, so more of women can access management positions and work more hours if they wish. So what actually works? Of course, we've talked about the need to skill more women to enter STEM occupations so that they can actually compete. We need to break down ideas about what types of work men and women should do. And of course, both men and women need to be educated on that. Reducing the gap will require action from everyone, individuals, governments, workers, employers, business and our communities, and all of those groups need to understand what's in it for them, really. We have to put the case. In the longer term, supporting more women into work will help secure stronger economic security for women and contribute to regional economic growth. So a couple of examples from the Australian perspective. We're taking a multifaceted approach to addressing the gender pay gap. We have a strategy called Towards 2025 around boosting women's participation. The focus is to reduce the gap between women and men by 25% by 2025, and that's participation rates, not gender pay gap. The goal was set in 2014 under Australia's G20 presidency. There are 5 things we're doing in that regard. Ensuring affordable, accessible and flexible childcare is the first. Second is improving workplace diversity and flexibility. Third, supporting women to innovate, succeed as entrepreneurs and thrive for jobs of the future. Fourth, strengthening women's economic security. And 5, enhancing financial incentives to work. There's a couple of initiatives I'll just mention that may be of interest in this topic. Male Champions of Change. We've talked a lot about the legislative requirements and the imperatives to support women, but how do you get men to join the discussion and to be champions? What's in it for them? The Male Champions of Change program is to pick influential male leaders to stand up and walk beside women to support gender equality. So there's a website that we have developed which provides practical guidance to leaders, step-by-step instructions on what leaders can do to fix the gender pay gap. We have a Board Links program which is ensuring more women are in leadership positions. It's setting a new target of men and women each holding 50% of government board positions and strengthening. And I have to say I'm really lucky to have a minister who every time we put up someone puts up a recommendation for a board position and it's a male, she sends it back and says, find me a woman. And they come back and they say, we couldn't find a woman. And she writes back and says, okay, then I'll appoint you just for 6 months. That'll give you time to find a woman. The third is working with the private sector. We're providing funding to the Australian Institute of Company Directors for scholarships for board diversity and cultural diversity. And finally, similar to the Koreans, we have what's called a Workplace Gender Equality Agency. Under our legislation, organisations that have 100 or more employees are required to report on their gender diversity. They're required to report on 6 indicators by law: gender composition of the workforce, remuneration by job and gender, conditions and practices around flexible work and employees with caring responsibilities, and their gender equality policies and practices, and finally on their policies on sex-based harassment and discrimination. So we have around 12,000 employers covering 4 million employees who have to report annually, and the data has found that a 10.8 percentage point increase to 37.7% of employers who are actually analysing their pay data for gender pay gaps. The data is published online for everyone to see. What the company gets is a chart that says here's where you sit against your industry average in terms of what you're paying women compared with what you're paying men. And the organisation Gender Equality Agency has found that a number of employers are quite shocked to find that they didn't think they had a gender pay gap. The data is conclusive, shows they do have a gender pay gap, and many of them have been very surprised and want to fix it. So the agency also works with employers to educate them. It's not about naming and shaming, it is actually focused on education. There's also a Employer of Choice Gender Equality Citation, which is an award employers can get to be an employer of choice for working with women and employing women. But of course we have a lot more to do. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our panellists about what can be done to address this, including what works and what commitments tripartite constituents can make to improving things in individual organisations as well as collectively. So I'd like to now turn to our panel. And we've already, I have to say, we already had a very lively debate just in preparing for the panel, so hoping that will continue this afternoon. So I would like to introduce as our first speaker Manuela Tamai, who is Director ILO Work Quality Department. I'll hand over to you for up to 10 minutes, as we were told. Oh, up to 8. It changed while I was walking down here. Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Hello, does it work? Hello, everybody. And indeed, as Sandra was saying, we have had a very lively debate in preparation to today's panel, which I think shows indeed the complexity of the task at hand and the importance of having all concerned actors together in order to come up with a shared understanding of what we are talking about, how to address it, and why it is important to deal with the issue. Sandra has already said that the ILO in one of our past publications have indicated that it will take about 70 years before the gender pay gap will close. More recently, the World Economic Report on Gender Gaps, as well as the OECD report, have indeed come up with even more pessimistic provisions, saying that it may take up to 230 years for the gender pay gap to close. So I think this is too long, and therefore there is we need to accelerate the process of change. And Sandra has also highlighted that there are a number of factors that indeed coalesce and that explain the reason why women, on average, tend to earn less than men. Among these multiple factors, I would like to spend a few words about one of the causes of the stubborn and entrenched gender pay gap, which is unequal pay. Unequal pay for work of equal value. This was one of the reasons for our very heated debate. First of all, when we are talking of equal pay for work of equal value, what the hell are we talking about? So, I mean, let's be clear in terms of what we are talking about. The first thing is that we are saying that women and men who are have comparable qualifications and who do the same job or similar work should be paid equally. That's pretty straightforward. That's easy to understand. But the evidence shows that indeed direct discrimination is growing in many countries. So, I mean, okay. So it's easy to detect, easy to understand, but the effectiveness of measures leaves much to be desired. The second issue is that men and women who do jobs which may differ in terms of the tasks, in terms of the responsibilities, in terms of the efforts, in terms of the conditions under which this job is performed, but this job is overall of equal value, they should be paid equally. Wow, that's difficult, right? And indeed, the reaction is, well, we are comparing pears with oranges, and this is impossible to do. So, I mean, let's try to move to the most important thing. Now, in reality, of course, it's not an easy thing to do, and I think that the entrenched nature of unequal pay is indeed a reflection of the complexity of the task. But saying that something is difficult to achieve does not mean that we should refrain from trying indeed to come up with sensible, realistic, effective measures. Why should we care? Because, I mean, that was another point that we were discussing. First of all, equal pay for work of equal value is about fairness. It's about fairness in pay. It's about fairness in remuneration. So why should you be paid less than another person when you are doing exactly the same type of work, you're putting the same number of hours, etc., etc. So it's fairness. The second issue is also having a greater or a better understanding of what are the responsibilities, the efforts, the competencies, the skills which are associated with different types of jobs, and in particular, typically female jobs and typically male jobs. You may indeed be able to detect, to uncover, disclose certain talents, certain efforts, certain requirements that were not accounted for, that were overlooked, and therefore were not compensated. So if you are able to get a clear picture of what is the set of requirements which are associated with the job and the jobs of the future, you will be better placed as an employer to indeed detect the profile that you need with a view to meeting and satisfying those requirements. And I will give you two very practical examples. Unequal pay or biases in the way in which, unequal pay occurs may occur in the structure of wages. So seniority, when seniority has a very heavy impact or weight on determining the overall remuneration of a job, it's clear that women are in a more disadvantaged situation because women's participation in the labor market is more intermittent. And women also leave the labor market before men, right, because of differences in retirement age. So these are not deliberate biases or a deliberate intention to discriminate against women, but somehow wages are constructed in a way that seem to put the way in which men participate in the labor market in a situation of greater advantage. Another example is, for instance, physical strength. Physical strength is valued a great deal. Oh, wow, 2 minutes. While manual dexterity and eye concentration may be considered to be of less value. And this means, again, that you are somehow giving a preferential treatment, if you wish, to men relative to women, because men and women are indeed located in different parts of the labor market. Occupational segregation. If we want to tackle occupational segregation by gender, we should not only encourage women to pursue STEM studies and try to engage and give the opportunity to indeed perform STEM-related jobs. This is certainly part of the equation. But we need also to try to provide a fairer assessment of the value of typically female jobs in the care industry, for instance. So when we are talking of tackling occupational segregation by gender, we should look at how to reduce the concentration of women in a particular number of jobs and men in another set of jobs. Statistics also show very clearly that despite the fact that women across the globe have never been as educated as now, there has been a shrinking of the number of occupations and sectors in which women work. And by the way, when you are comparing the gender pay gap at the top of the earnings and skills distribution, you actually realize that the portion of the pay gap which is due to biases in the way in which wages are formed is much larger than at the bottom of the wage distribution. So again, this tells us that education is certainly very important to get access to better paying jobs, but is not going in itself to address the problem of unequal pay. Okay, I think I'm done, but let me Shall I? No. No, I'm not going to be unfair to you. I think there are, when you're saying, well, what shall we do? I mean, there is no silver bullet. Everybody has been struggling with it, so it means that indeed there is a lot of work still to be done. And then, of course, everything is context specific. We need to take into account labor market structures, economic transformational process which are underway, et cetera, et cetera. But in all cases, irrespective of the diversity of circumstances, stats, data are tremendously important. It's actually to make the issue visible, and it's to monitor the trends. Is it getting better, worse? Why? What are the underpinning causes of the gender pay gap? The other issue, and pay transparency, that many enterprises are indeed have started to do because of mandated by the law, are another way of indeed revealing the scale of the phenomenon. Laws are an indispensable measure, but laws need to be smart and need to be enforced. So the content of the law and also the enforcement strategies are absolutely crucial, because otherwise it will again be a sort of token law. Another very important issue is tools. Tools is the how-to. Unequal pay is particularly marked, according to research which has been conducted in this area, in small-size enterprises. So it's very important to provide, to make it easy, to make it easily understandable, the tools which are required in order to determine whether or not there is indeed discrimination in pay in the particular workplaces. And last but not least, when we are talking about reducing or addressing unequal pay in the informal economy or for women at the very bottom of the wage distribution, the experience the evidence across the world shows that indeed minimum wages may play that role, because women are disproportionately represented at the bottom. And domestic work, I mean, we spoke a lot about domestic work this morning. Countries have indeed aligned minimum wages of domestic workers to those of workers generally, and this is one very concrete way of indeed ensuring equal pay for work of equal value at the bottom. Sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll now turn to our second speaker, Ms. Sandra D'Amico, Managing Director, HR Inc. Cambodia.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to raise a few challenges in general, because I'm speaking on as an employer, and I'm also the Vice President of the Cambodian Federation of Employers and Business Associations. And my key question is gender pay gaps a priority for employers, and how can we play a role in trying to reduce the gaps in pay? So first, I would like to just highlight some critical points or challenges, as we call them. And one is that the business case, I feel, on all the women's issues is not very clear. Because I have a statement that says, because you have women on the board, a company performs better. It's not clear to me how that really happens. Does that really happen? And if it really does, why is the whole world not doing it? Because we'd all be a lot more profitable. So there's a challenge for me in going back and really championing the cause, because we don't really understand the research and the drive on the research. And I say this because I've been to several meetings, and it's really important that we are all talking here and can understand the issues, but our stakeholders back home are very different. And to be able to go back and champion a cause, we need to be able to talk about it. And I can't say why that is happening. How does it really happen? when in general diversity is a good thing, but we're focused on the women's issue. So the concrete business case is really, really needed in the context of the different countries, which brings me to the second point. It's been wonderful to listen to the different country contexts in the last 2 days, because context is clearly so important to the issue of challenges that women face. The island examples in particular were very, very interesting. The matter of structure of salaries that you were talking about on seniority, I would not term as a women's issue. It's not a women's issue. The labor market at the time was giving seniority bonuses, maybe to retain people in the same company, maybe to keep people in particular jobs, like Cambodia has a seniority bonus in the garment sector. And that was in the labor market at that time and should not be positioned as a woman versus a man issue that we're out of the labor force now, because when it was introduced, maybe women were at home and not working. So I think that the issues around pay are incredibly sensitive, and the context of a country as well is very, very specific in all the work that we are doing. Please let me be clear. Equal job, equal pay, absolutely agree with. But understanding what is an equal job is very important, because today we don't say you have a bachelor degree and you have a bachelor degree and you are a man and you're a woman, therefore you get paid the same thing. Employers today want skills, and I can tell you, in a country like Cambodia, where we are, and I'm in the recruiting industry, where you have challenges with education systems, we don't look at education, we look at skills. What can you do? So when you tell me equal job and equal pay, yes, absolutely agree. But when we're looking at individuals who are doing the job, the case there in terms of what is equal pay is very important to be made, because employers are making decisions on skills, not necessarily equal education levels, but real skills. So I think that's important to address in how we talk about equal jobs and equal pay. I think it's very important to point out that own account workers, which we have spoken about quite a lot in fact, are actually the future of work. Not only the lower end account workers, but a lot of professionals are going off to work alone. I was so surprised to go back to my home country, which is South Africa, and so many of my friends are just doing their own little consulting thing. That's what is happening today. People want to have more flexibility. They want to be at home. I'm having discussions with my management team, women and men, wanting to leave the workforce because I want to be at home with my family and I want to just do a little massage business, or I want to do a little restaurant or a little food business, because it's much easier to manage work and life that way. And I have a lot of baby rooms and things in my office, and I'm still having those discussions with my team who want to leave the workforce. I think we have to understand that own account workers are not only at the lowest level and the poorest level and the most vulnerable level, but in general, for own account workers, how are we going to build the infrastructure around our social security systems to let people have access to social security, pension, workplace accident, and things like that. The last challenge, oh no, it's not a challenge, but the question that was asked to me is, are employer organizations, is closing the pay gap a priority for us? The answer is no, it's not. And why is it not? Because we are working on diversification, we're working on labor law changes, we're working on real issues for our members and what they want us to be representing them on. And unless I actually have a program from the ILO, which is going to give me resources, time, and people to be able to work on that issue, it's not something that we can do alone as an employer's organization. And that is a challenge, because I think even for unions, it's a problem, right? What do you want? You want better pay for all your workers, not necessarily close the gap between men and women. You just want to increase the wages. And unless we have programs that are promoting and championing these issues, it's very difficult for us to actually do it on our own. And I think for each EO in the different country, you have very, very different issues, and so the focus is, of course, different for all of us. So let me speak about recommendations. One, we need more men in the room, because I don't need to convince all of you of the challenges. We need to convince the men of the challenges. But we need to have a more diverse group to be able to convince and go back and have the discussion in the different countries. Two, we need to increase the research on the issues in the different countries, so that in the country context, we really, really do have a better understanding of the challenges that we face. So when we have research, we can do more promotion on the different issues. I think without a doubt, employer organizations should always be encouraging equal pay for equal jobs. And I sort of like the Australia example, where you do this reporting and you get some advice on, oh wow, you actually have a pay gap which you maybe didn't see or weren't aware of. But it has to be educational and not a sanction. Because sanctions really send employers running very quickly. I think to keep women in the workplace, and I did this, I had to do this to keep women at work, was the facilities around childbirth when people have babies. And you see this in Cambodia, you need more baby care centers, you need to have these facilities so that women can peacefully go to work and not be stressful when they go to work. But it's also not easy for everybody to do in different countries. I think the ILO needs to engage more with the women's ministries in the different countries, so that we can, with unions, not separately employers and separately unions, but together invest efforts in working with the ministry, because I think the issues have a common area for unions and employers to work together, and they shouldn't be separate programs, but be working together to also build the relations between employers and unions always. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you very much. Our third speaker is Mr. Tuan Nguyen Kak, Vice Director, Research Centre for Female Labour and Gender, the Institute for Labour Science and Social Affairs. Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ILO invited me to sharing my view about the gender pay gap. It's the first thing I share about the situation of gender pay gap in Vietnam is the pay gap. The pay gap between male and female workers still existed on the labor markets in Vietnam. However, tended to decreasing, but it was on slowly once during the periods 2005 and 2015. The data, according to the data survey, population survey 2016 is average pay gap for the women is around only the 85% of average wage for the men. for men. There many something for pay gap. Women is factor contributing to pay gap, gender pay gap. I think it to have two things for most important for the pay gap. Gender pay gap is age retirement and qualification. Is my age group, the gender pay gap is age groups 55 to 59 is elected in the main cause of situation as the first, according to the breast created by the labor court in Vietnam, is the women has a retirement age at 55 earlier 5 years ago than men. The current gender roles, woman is take care, hold work and cares for the elderly children more than men. By the technical qualification is the technical level of female labor force is still lower than men, so it's the main cause why the woman worker difficult to accept high paying job. It's by industrial in general. Almost half of the employee people are in the agriculture, forestry, fisher sector. However, the structure of the employment between the men and women varied among groups. Women worker in lower average industries such as agriculture, forestry, fisher and service sector always account the higher proportion than men. In terms of occupation groups, female labor is still occupy high proportion of job that do not require the qualification speed, especially in the simple job, personal service, sale or informal sector. This contribution to increasing gender pay gap. By the employment status groups, household worker employment have the last gender pay gap. The woman in gap mostly in self-employment or unpaid housework, leading to the result those women primary school agriculture among the vulnerable worker and in the plastic work. By the marriage status, the categories marriage has not gender work pay gap compares with the categories unmarried, divorce. Inequality in the perception, discriminatory attitude and social gender bias among the other individual factors that had a great impact on the gender pay gaps in Vietnam. There have been great progress in promotion of gender equality and women empowerment. However, gender stereotypes and discrimination still exist in society, especially in the labor market as a population problem. The law and policy on labor, employment and pay gaps have to ensure implementation of quality pay in labor markets. However, some policy and regulation that have not fully and strictly implemented have to also contribute to increase gender pay gap. In the future, the government concentrate to do some area follows. First of all is continuing improvement policy on gender equality, mainstreaming, and gender equality in the enlightenment and implementation on labor and employment policy. The second is continue promote gender equality in education and training, vocational training, support, facilitate and encourage women and girls access difficult to remote area education and increasing to promotion of women involvement in education high school level. The third, structuring shift of the economic reform, agriculture to industry and service as a less necessary and will have redone the gap, the gender pay gap. However, carefully planning lead to show the tailor to each locally avoid citizen when gender pay gap is reduced in agriculture but increasing in other sectors. In the finally is further research needs in order to better understood root cause and the interdependence of the different different local, especially focused on to be played on the economic sector and industry when the last gender pay gap as for the ad hoc intervention are to be carried out by local government as well. Besides that, another important sensitive measurement and when the legislation in the field of the labor to ensure enough monitoring and evaluation of impact in place of the yearly passed regulation. Modisa is to the uncountable of the gender sensitive law and requires introduction so measurement to zero gender pay gap. Can you review and better adapt to present labor market situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, we have Ms. Lataleta Gaga, Vice President, Fiji Trade Union Congress, Fiji.
Thank you, Sandra. First of all, it is indeed a privilege and an honor to be part of this panel discussion. And of course, it's always difficult after lunch. People are starting to doze off to sleep, of course, and concentration level deteriorates at this time of the day. But I hope that you're enjoying the discussions from my fellow panelists. Now, I would like to start with basically a quote from one of my personal role models, the former US Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. I find this quote as very much relevant to this topic. And she once said that last I checked, there is no discount for being a woman. Groceries don't cost us less. Rent doesn't cost us less. So why should we as women be paid less, unquote. In addressing this, of course, gender gap issue, I'll have two main points that I would like to highlight from the trade union's perspective and of course as a general perspective. The first one that I would particularly address is how can unions make sure the gender gap is prioritized and addressed? And secondly, what needs to be done collectively to close the gap as we approach the 100th anniversary of the ILO? Now, from a worker's perspective, of course, the number one thing that we could do firstly is collectively organizing and recruiting workers to become part of the union. Studies have indicated and shown that once workers join the union, of course, there is a higher volume of their voice that could be raised and represented in the marketplace, in the workforce. And for this particular point, I would like to also add on to state that while we unions need to focus on recruitment of union members, they also need to focus on women, organizing women into the trade union movement. And not only that, stop at that, we also must also continue to be aggressive in organizing men workers so that they can understand the issues that women are going through and have a collective voice when it comes to addressing women issues. Now, I understand that we have majority of the female counterparts here today, but I take my hat off to the male colleagues that are with us. This gets to show that you are also partnering with us in this struggle. Now, in terms of organizing as well, one thing that the unions have done or could do is basically focus on a gender strategic organizing activity and involve women in activities as much as you want to recruit them. The second point that I would like to add on to that is basically collective bargaining. Now, collective bargaining is a core function of the trade union movement. And of course, it is through this process that we get to basically negotiate with our respective counterpart, the employers, in improving the terms and conditions of employment. And in the context of women, and particularly in relation to the pay gap, we strongly advise that we have to include women in negotiations table, right, so that they can freely express and raise their views and concerns and issues in relation to women. And also, and as far as collective bargaining is concerned, we must make sure that not only do women should be represented in negotiation tables, but also in leadership position. And I think yesterday we've had a very good panel that discussed that, and I do not want to touch that today. Again, still on collective bargaining, of course, we need to make sure, the trade union movement, the trade union leaders could also assist this fight in basically pushing for provisions within the collective agreement that would be gender-friendly and gender-focused. But before we can get to that, we need to identify, really do our personal assessment within our respective organizations to see whether the existing collective agreements has provisions for gender. Like conduct a gender test and see whether we are moving forward or we're putting on a reverse gear. And that is particularly important because that would set the strategies for us to use in order for us to promote gender provisions within the collective agreements. And lastly, on the collective bargaining process, I would state that there is a need for us to train and educate union officials on how to collect data, how to analyze it, particularly with gender pay, with pay. And of course, we could use that to capitalize our negotiation efforts to push for at least closing the gap on pay. And of course, I'm honored to see that there are some countries that have legislations in place whereby employers are obligated to disclose the pay structure. Unfortunately for Fiji, we are not there yet. But I'm sure that this could be something that we can take home and improve on. Now, I'll move quickly to my second point, and I realize that I have 5 minutes left. Second point is, what can we do collectively as a group? And I would really want to emphasize this really clearly for us this afternoon. Now, as ILO reaches the 100th year, what an achievement. We must look back and see what was the objective or the purpose why ILO was established in the first place. Of course, to achieve world peace through social justice. Now we look back 100 years from next year. Have we really achieved the purpose of the establishment of the ILO? And one question that I would pose to the floor is pay gap an indication of justice? Is pay gap an indication of social justice? If it is not, then there is a serious need for us to evaluate and see what we can do as individuals. I take the cue from the statement that was made last night by the Assistant Director General, where she mentioned she uses every forum to speak on gender equality. And for us here today, I believe that we must also take our cue from that and use every forum possible or whatever opportunities we get to make sure that we advocate for these issues. In the trade union movement, we believe in 1+1. You organize one person and another person into the trade union movement. For in this case, we need to empower our fellow women and also men, importantly, in this issue as we continue continue this fight of gender equality, and particularly with pay gaps. So with the ILO, it's a unique structure from the rest of the UN bodies. Now, what can we do collectively? And I'm glad that my employer counterpart here as part of the panel, very diplomatic in her approach to prove her point, has raised a very important point as well. Like, we need to work together. It's no longer a women's issue, it's no longer a trade union issue, it's no longer an employer issue. It's a collective issue which we need to work hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, to ensure that we continue forward and never backward. So with these words, I would say that we can utilize the tripartite forum within the ILO, engage in social dialogue, exchange practices, discussions, although we may have heated discussions like we had before we walked into this room, but that's okay. That's the beauty of the ILO. We engage in social dialogue, exchange ideas, and see what works, and we move forward. So with those words, again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope I haven't gone beyond time.
Say hear to that. Do we have any questions from the floor to any members of the panel? We have until 3:15, so we will speedily get a couple of questions in.
I have a clarification, not a question.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was a fabulous panel. Congratulations, everybody. I have a quick clarification for Sandra about the question you asked with regards to what's known in shorthand as the diversity dividend. So I'll give you a copy of the research afterwards, but the latest, largest research has been done by the Peterson Institute in 2016, and they did a survey of 22,000 firms and looked at what percentage of women were both on the board and in the C-suite. About 60% of the 22,000 had no women. And then what they did was actually look to see if there was a correlation between firm performance and what's known in shorthand as the diversity dividend. The conclusion was that the strongest was for women in senior management, followed by women on boards, although the research with countries where there's been quotas, like France and Finland, doesn't have any definitive data. And the outcome was around a 6% higher return on investment. So your question is a very good one. If it actually makes good business sense, then why isn't it happening more? And I guess we come back to those social norms that we've been talking about through our process. The final thing is that a lone woman CEO made no difference. So it is actually about that diversity dividend and having different perspectives that can be brought to the table. And I'll be very happy to share the research with you.
Do you want to comment, Sandra? No? No comment from here? Questions?
Again, if I can please ask all of us who have the microphone to keep it short, otherwise we won't have dinner tonight.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to that a little bit, and just to say that I think we are at that stage, and this is a comment, so I'm sorry if there's no question at the end of it, but I thought it'd be valuable to add. At the end of this discussion, I think we need to move forward from just looking at the number of women and men in organizations as an explanation of what diversity constitutes. Gender diversity can no longer be thought of having 50-50 men and women, but about like making women comfortable about bringing their whole selves to work and facilitating conditions so that the best performance can be enabled by all employees without anyone feeling left out. This doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. And I think why it's not happening yet, if I can add to that, is because firms are now lacking the tools and the mechanisms to know what works. Not enough literature and not enough work has been gone down in narrowing down exactly what works to make diversity give positive dividends. we know that it does, we just don't know how to get there, and it's important that more research gets done on this. So that's my ad.
Thank you.
There's one of the panel members here has been a researcher in this area for 7 years, so I think we'll put that to you to do, amongst others. Agree. Is there a question from anyone?
Maybe I can comment,
Yes, please.
since I'm controversial. So, I agree we need more research, but that it's really important because diversity is not men and women. There's a lot about diversity that we need to take care of. In each business, it could be dealing with gay and lesbian, the LGBT community. It could be getting different religions into your workplace. It could be a multitude of different things that is needed. And the Pearson research, a 6% difference in return on investment, I don't know if that's big enough for anybody to go, wow, now I'm going to go and get women into the management, which is when we come as employers' organizations to these meetings, we need to go back with a case to really drive it. And it can be an international case, but very often you need the local case. What is that local business case? And for us, it's very difficult because in Cambodia, there is no real research that I can actually argue with a big Cambodian business and saying, right, you need to change the game. So the reality is, it's a really difficult topic to realize on the ground for an employer organization, for a union to get things done. And so we have to, we just have to try our best. And as the priorities come and as the opportunities come for us to promote specifically, because we don't have the resources as employer organizations to have a big gender team and do big research, we really rely on the programs that make them happen or the intermittent research that can be done in the different countries. But it's really good to see that Vietnam, for example, is doing gender research. And so yes, sharing tools and opportunities and learning about what Australia does, really, really interesting. And things that we can take home and share with our members.
Thank you.
I think definitely I agree that there is need for further research, but there is already a great deal of research out there. And there are also plenty of different tools and programs that have been tested, that are being piloted, and some that have also yielded some positive results. So I think that one challenge is, yes, to invest in more research in order to get actually the sort of local story and being able to more effectively advocate for the local employers and trade unions. But I think we need to invest more in terms of socializing and making available the wealth of tools, information, experiences that is out there in the world. So indeed, I mean, this brings me then to anticipate the one of the issues that will be discussed tonight, which is EPIC, which is this Equal Pay International Coalition, which indeed is very much based on what all of us on this panel have acknowledged. That this is an issue which is complex, this is an issue which, however, we need to act upon, we need to be innovative, and no single actor by itself will be in a position to address the problem. So it's really a call for partnerships, a call for sharing, a call for peer-to-peer exchanges, a call for digging further into the reasons behind the persistence of this issue.
I'll just make one comment. At the local level, certainly in Australia's experience, the male champions of change have been instrumental. what we needed to do was to find who in the community who does the community look up to? Who do the men look up to in the community? In Australia, it's sports people, of course, amongst other groups. And it is working with them, talking to them about the benefits of employing women, promoting women, championing women, and because they are high profile and they have really high esteem in the community, other men will listen to them. It's the data, but it's also about men who are courageous and get it and understand the value of having women in equal positions, getting up and saying that and talking to other men. Those things are really valuable at the local level, and we've had some really good results from that. So I would encourage you to think about that because it is hard to sit down with employers and say, here's all the research, have a look at it, you know, read this 50-page document. Much better to say, look, these men are doing it and they're saying it's beneficial and you should too. And there's a little bit of shaming possibly that might help too, which is one of the questions up there. BBC's done it. Certainly the community's done it with the BBC, as we've pointed out here. Similarly with the ABC, seems to be the media has a major issue. And so, yes, some shaming certainly, but mostly championing and positive messaging and educating is what seems to work. We have time for another question. Does anyone have one? One here, one here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Adriani from Indonesia. I work at the Ministry of Manpower as a Director of Wages. That's why I speak. Actually, I just want to share experience concerning that question. The previous one. Yes. What are the indicator and methodology for quantifying equal value of work as context matter? Just a sharing experience, in Indonesia, we already have a regulation, ministerial regulation concerning wage structure and scale. The wage structure and scale is mean the company, each company should make wage structure and scale. Wage structure mean the level of wages from the lower wages for the lower level of job until the higher wages for the highest level of job. And we have methodology how to identify the lowest job and how to give the value of this of the job. And also the scale of the wages. So scale of wages is, we can identify the level of wages of each people depend on their productivity. So we have the productivity measurement, and we also have how to measure the value of the job. So now we have the government ministry regulation on that. So wage structure and scale. This is one thing, and the other thing is, now we already have the regulation on wage structure and scale. The other thing is, now our government concerned on how to give access to all the people, especially women, to access to all level of the job, to all level of the occupation, so they can also get the same value of the job through training, especially for training for all ages. Even though they already pensioned, we can give access for training, so they can access all type of the job, all type of occupation. That's the just sharing experience concerning that question. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone would like to comment quickly from the panel, otherwise I'm going to wind up. I know there's more people who like to ask questions, but we are running out of time, and I'm going to be very hard line on that. Would anyone from the panel like to comment on the last speaker?
Thank you for the time. My name is Clarissa Lay. I'm from Timor-Leste, is a new country. I want to introduce my position is the Vice President for the CCI Chamber of Commerce Timor-Leste, and I also one of the Consigliere for the Women Association Timor-Leste, and I also one of leader for the Christian Business Marketplace. the first, I want to thank you for the ILO to invite us, and ILO Australia for organizing this conference and invited us from Timor-Leste. We are a small country, a nation that tend to be the path of opportunity to women here. I learned a lot from the 2 days discussion, and thanks the panel for the valuable. I will turn back to the share with the colleagues in Chamber of Commerce, also Women Association, University and Timor-Leste, UNTL. And I have only two input to make here. As employers and with lots women worker is very important to empower and raising their confidence and recognition and reward they contribute account according nice example how promotion and salary increases made them feel opportunity and feel the business is on. And the second, as women enterprise, especially the country of Timor-Leste, we, a woman, usually being recognized in as achievement and success in the we need recognizing and how the opportunity to make changes position level to help and empower women to be enterprise. Because I try for the more than 25 years, I'm in the business, and I'm from the small business from 9 years old when my country is very hard. And I can believe the woman can grow in the new country or the very success country, because a woman is a hard work. And also I have now I have 7 business in Timor-Leste for at the moment, and then I have more than 300 plus workers, and 70% is the women. Thus I think we thank you so much for the ILO in Timor-Leste or International to still give up to all the opportunity in ILO International like today. And don't forget for the next time to other opportunity. Thank you so much to sharing.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the session. So thank you everyone for participating and for the discussion. It is much appreciated. And now.
Yep, I'm here. And now take a group photos. That
Now
would
you
be
take
first
group
things
photos.
that I have to do.
Okay,
Right.
thank you very much.
Ladies and
everyone.
gentlemen, round of applause for our chair and our wonderful panelists. All right. How do you want them? Do you want them standing up? Can you please stand up and maybe come here in the front? Right. People have been asking where we can get all these photos. Been taking a lot of photos. I'm sure it will be up on the ILO website. Ladies and gentlemen, while our panelists and chair are having their photo taken, the one thing I don't like to do as a master of ceremony is to tell people that we don't have much time. But I will have to say that anyway, because we are quite running late. So the coffee break and the next session will be combined together. So you don't have 7-minute coffee break and then discussion. You have now 30 minutes for both coffee break and discussion. Thank you. Thanks, our lovely chairs and panelists. Akun charan cha. All right. Now it's my turn to go up. Thank you. Right. Joni, right. Well, can we cheers for ourselves? Round of applause. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go straight to the next session, and this is the breakout group discussion. So we would like to request all of you to please go in the group, which...
Migrant workers in construction. An estimated 40% are women. They come mostly from Myanmar and Cambodia in search of better work and decent pay.
I'm just here to earn money in order to support my family. My whole family are farmers. I was a farmer, but the income does not cover for the whole family.
A recent ILO study reveals that migrant women have different experiences than men they work alongside. Working conditions often fall far short of expectations and short of Thai minimum standards. Many feel that their identities as migrant workers and as women impact on how they are treated. Pay was the most important concern for women migrant workers. The study revealed that 31 out of 42 women migrant workers interviewed were paid below the minimum wage for Thailand, less than 300 Thai baht per day. Migrant women reported being paid less than men even if they had more experience. Even migrant workers who are considered skilled receive just over the national minimum wage, while all Thai workers interviewed reported receiving over the national minimum wage and with skills are able to move up the wage ladder. Some of the discrimination faced by migrant women construction workers is directly related to the fact that they are women. Employers regularly dismiss pregnant women, and no woman had received maternity pay or leave.
I will not get paid if I'm pregnant. That's why I use birth control pills.
In Thailand, there are around 500,000 documented migrant workers in construction. An estimated 40% are women. They come mostly from Myanmar and Cambodia in search of better work and decent pay.
I'm just here to earn money in order to support my family. My whole family are farmers. I was a farmer, but the income does not cover for the whole family.
A recent ILO study reveals that migrant women have different experiences than men they work alongside. Working conditions often fall far short of expectations and short of Thai minimum standards. Many feel that their identities as migrant workers and as women impact on how they are treated. Pay was the most important concern for women migrant workers. The study revealed that 31 out of 42 women migrant workers interviewed were paid below the minimum wage for Thailand, less than 300 Thai baht per day. Migrant women reported being paid less than men even if they had more experience. Even migrant workers who are considered skilled receive just over the national minimum wage, while all Thai workers interviewed reported receiving over the national minimum wage and with skills are able to move up the wage ladder. Some of the discrimination faced by migrant women construction workers is directly related to the fact that they are women. Employers regularly dismiss pregnant women, and no woman had received maternity pay or leave.
I will not get paid if I'm pregnant. That's why I use birth control pills. I have to pay for everything if I get pregnant.
Many employers surveyed reported hiring women out of obligation, not preference. Women migrant construction workers are often employed alongside their husbands as part of a package.
We have to recruit the couple. They come together. You have to find a job for her. Otherwise, they will not come.
However, many employers who do hire women have found that they are able to do work to the same or a higher standard as men.
But the woman also does the finishes. You have to touch up and then you have to skim coat. The women are more skilled in this.
Thailand needs women migrant construction workers. However, working and living conditions in the sector need to improve before it can contribute to women's and women migrant workers' development.
Making money makes me feel strong to be supporting my family.
Hi, it's Hoa. I'm back again. I have something really important to talk about. It's a subject we rarely discuss because it can make us feel uncomfortable. Sexual harassment at the workplace. Some of you already know what that means. You may have even experienced it. You might be wondering, how do I know about this subject? Well, it's happened to me. At first, I avoided the issue and didn't know who to ask for help. I felt ashamed, but there's nothing to be ashamed about, and it's up to all of us to prevent it. So, what is sexual harassment at the workplace? How can we recognise it, and how does it affect our lives? Sexual harassment includes both physical contact and verbal and non-verbal acts. It can be as simple as an inappropriate suggestion, comment, gesture, or even a text message that's sexual in tone, or as serious as a sexual assault. Some of us don't know we are being victimised and feel powerless to stop it. A Vietnamese proverb says, being a flower is to be picked up, being a woman is to be cheated on by men. When this could lead to bad behaviour by men, women can find themselves victim of sexual harassment, and that's not funny at all. It is also unacceptable behaviour which is prohibited by law. It means factories have to take measures to prevent harassment, which they usually do through a written policy. Companies that buy our clothes often have rules against harassment too, designed to ensure factories protect workers. But many victims of sexual harassment don't know who to turn to if they have been abused. Often they remain silent or feel too afraid to report an incident. I also felt ashamed and worried I'd lose my job if I reported a problem. The problems didn't go away, and soon I was so depressed I didn't want to go to work. But eventually I decided I didn't want to suffer in silence or let others face the same experience. I first confronted the person harassing me and let him know what he was doing was upsetting me. When it didn't stop, I took notes on what happened, where and when. Then I spoke to my supervisor, whom I trust, and she knew exactly what to do. She went to speak to the human resource manager. Then things really began to change for the better. So, if you ever experience sexual harassment in the workplace, don't suffer in silence and make sure you speak to someone who can solve the problem. They will listen and they know how to help you. Do it for yourself and your colleagues.
Our factory meal program feeds more than 5,000 people every day.
អ្នកដែលធ្វើការនៅក្នុងរោងចក្រនៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាភាគច្រើនគឺជាស្ត្រីហើយស្ត្រីជាច្រើនគឺគាត់មិនបានទទួលទានអាហារដែលមានជាតិដែកគ្រប់គ្រាន់នោះទេដោយសារកង្វះជាតិដែកនៅក្នុងអាហារមិនបានគ្រប់គ្រាន់ធ្វើឲ្យស្ត្រីភាគច្រើនគាត់ឈឺក្បាលអស់កម្លាំង
One of the critical concerns that we have with a large population of women workers is their general health and their well-being in the factories. So nutrition's been a really important consideration for us.
គោលដៅចម្បងរបស់ពួកយើងគឺចង់ពង្រឹងផ្នែកសុខភាពនិងការផលិត
In a tight labour market as we have here in Cambodia, it's absolutely an advantage for the factories to provide meals, whether they're breakfasts or lunches.
រឿងដំបូងដែលពួកយើងបានធ្វើនោះគឺចាំបាច់ត្រូវរកវិធីល្អដើម្បីធ្វើវា ហើយដំណោះស្រាយដ៏ល្អសម្រាប់ពួកយើងនោះគឺទី1ត្រូវធ្វើផ្ទះបាយមួយទី2គឺត្រូវរើសបុគ្គលិកដែលមានជំនាញក្នុងការចម្អិនដើម្បីចម្អិនអាហារជូនកម្មករពួកយើងក៏មានការព្រួយបារម្ភផងដែរចំពោះកម្មករមួយចំនួនដែលគាត់មិនពេញចិត្តទៅលើអាហារដែលពួកយើងបានចម្អិនឲ្យពួកគាត់ដូច្នេះហើយពួកគាត់មានការត្អូញត្អែជាច្រើនហើយក៏អាចបណ្ដាលឲ្យទៅជាមានការកុតកម្មដូច្នេះនេះជាហេតុផលមួយដែលពួកយើងបានបង្កើតសមាជិកគ្រប់គ្រងចំណីអាហារ
ពួកយើងទាំងអស់គ្នាគឺជាកម្មករនៅក្នុងរោងចក្រហើយក៏ជាតំណាងសហជីពផងដែរពួកយើងបាននិយាយគ្នាទៅកាន់មិត្តភ័ក្តិនិងបដូរយោបល់គ្នាទៅវិញទៅមកទាក់ទងនឹងអាហារហើយបើសិនបើពួកយើងមានបញ្ហាជាមួយនឹងអាហារយើងអាចផ្ដល់ព័ត៌មានឬក៏រាយការណ៍ទៅកាន់អ្នកគ្រប់គ្រងរបស់ពួកយើង
We go through over 700 kilograms of rice a day.
អាហារថ្ងៃត្រង់របស់ពួកយើងជាធម្មតាបាយនិងសម្លហើយពួកយើងអាចញ៉ាំនៅអ្វីដែលពួកយើងអាចញ៉ាំបានហើយម្យ៉ាងវិញទៀតធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំអាចសន្សំលុយបានច្រើនព្រោះថាជារៀងរាល់ថ្ងៃពេលចំណាយទៅលើអាហារថ្ងៃត្រង់ខ្ញុំមិនបាច់ចំណាយប្រាក់ទិញឡើយហើយខ្ញុំអាចញ៉ាំអាហារបានតែគ្រប់គ្រាន់ព្រោះវាមិនកំណត់បរិមាណឡើយ
I think there are real benefits for Cambodian suppliers to adopt the meal provision services because that really is both supporting their productivity as companies but also directly the workers' health and well-being.
កម្មកររបស់យើងភាគច្រើនរស់នៅឆ្ងាយពីរោងចក្រអាហារប្រកបដោយជីវជាតិគ្រប់គ្រាន់និងឥតគិតថ្លៃជួយពួកគេសន្សំសំចៃលុយនិងសុខភាពល្អពួកយើងមិនមានផ្ទះបាយទេប៉ុន្តែពួកយើងមានកន្លែងសម្រាប់ឲ្យកម្មករហូបអាហារយើងបានកំងម្ហូបអាហារពីអ្នកផ្គត់ផ្គង់នៅជិតរោងចក្រហើយអាហារទាំងអស់នោះត្រូវបានចម្អិននៅក្រៅរោងចក្រកម្មករទទួលបានបាយមួយប្រអប់ជាមួយនឹងម្ហូបដែលមានសាច់និងបន្លែយើងបានលើកការធ្វើឲ្យជាច្រើនពីរសជាតិអាហារដែលយើងបានទិញពីអ្នកផ្គត់ផ្គង់ដំបូងដូច្នេះហើយទៅបានជាយើងផ្លាស់ប្ដូរអ្នកផ្គត់ផ្គង់ពួកយើងពិតជារីករាយខ្លាំងណាស់ចំពោះលទ្ធផលនៃការផ្ដល់អាហារនេះចាប់តាំងពីយើងបង្កើតកម្មវិធីនេះមកកម្មករដែលសិនច្បាប់ឈាមមានតិចជាងមុនហើយកម្មករក៏បន្តធ្វើការជាមួយយើងបានយូរអង្វែង
One of our major footwear factories established a canteen. They were challenged by labor shortages. The next day after they established a canteen, they had a queue of 400 people looking for work. So if you really look at the economic returns from providing food and the benefit for the workers, it really is a win-win.
ការទទួលទានអាហារប្រកបដោយគុណភាពពិតជាធ្វើឲ្យសុខភាពកាន់តែប្រសើរ
I have to be honest, at first I was really doubtful offering the food to our workers. I thought we'd have too many headaches. But it's worked out so well for us that I wish we'd done it earlier.
In Thailand, there are around 500,000 documented migrant workers in construction. An estimated 40% are women. They come mostly from Myanmar and Cambodia in search of better work and decent pay.
I'm just here to earn money in order to support my family. My whole family are farmers. I was a farmer, but the income does not cover for the whole family.
A recent ILO study reveals that migrant women have different experiences than men they work alongside. Working conditions often fall far short of expectations and short of Thai minimum standards. Many feel that their identities as migrant workers and as women impact on how they are treated. Pay was the most important concern for women migrant workers. The study revealed that 31 out of 42 women migrant workers interviewed were paid below the minimum wage for Thailand, less than 300 Thai baht per day. Migrant women reported being paid less than men even if they had more experience. Even migrant workers who are considered skilled received just over the national minimum wage, while all Thai workers interviewed reported receiving over the national minimum wage and with skills are able to move up the wage ladder. Some of the discrimination faced by migrant women construction workers is directly related to the fact that they are women. Employers regularly dismiss pregnant women, and no woman had received maternity pay or leave.
I will not get paid if I'm pregnant. That's why I use birth control pills. I have to pay for everything if I get pregnant.
Many employers surveyed reported hiring women out of obligation, not preference. Women migrant construction workers are often employed alongside their husbands as part of a package.
We have to recruit the couple. They come together. You have to find a job for her. Otherwise, they will not come.
However, many employers who do hire women have found that they are able to do work to the same or a higher standard as men.
But the woman also does the finishes. You have to touch up and then you have to skim coat. The women are more skilled in this.
Thailand needs women migrant construction workers. However, working and living conditions in the sector need to improve before it can contribute to women's and women migrant workers' development.
Making money makes me feel strong to be supporting my family.
Hi, it's Hoa. I'm back again. I have something really important to talk about. It's a subject we rarely discuss because it can make us feel uncomfortable. Sexual harassment at the workplace. Some of you already know what that means. You may have even experienced it. You might be wondering, how do I know about this subject? Well, it's happened to me. At first, I avoided the issue and didn't know who to ask for help. I felt ashamed, but there's nothing to be ashamed about, and it's up to all of us to prevent it. So, what is sexual harassment at the workplace? How can we recognize it, and how does it affect our lives? Sexual harassment includes both physical contact and verbal and non-verbal acts. It can be as simple as an inappropriate suggestion, comment, gesture, or even a text message that's sexual in tone, or as serious as a sexual assault. Some of us don't know we are being victimized and feel powerless to stop it. A Vietnamese proverb says, being a flower is to be picked up, being a woman is to be cheated on by men. When this could lead to bad behavior by men, women can find themselves victim of sexual harassment, and that's not funny at all. It is also unacceptable behavior which is prohibited by law. It means factories have to take measures to prevent harassment, which they usually do through a written policy. Companies that buy our clothes often have rules against harassment too, designed to ensure factories protect workers. But many victims of sexual harassment don't know who to turn to if they have been abused. Often they remain silent or feel too afraid to report an incident. I also felt ashamed and worried I'd lose my job if I reported a problem. The problems didn't go away, and soon I was so depressed I didn't want to go to work. But eventually I decided I didn't want to suffer in silence or let others face the same experience. I first confronted the person harassing me and let him know what he was doing was upsetting me. When it didn't stop, I took notes on what happened, where and when. Then I spoke to my supervisor, whom I trust, and she knew exactly what to do. She went to speak to the human resource manager. Then things really began to change for the better. So if you ever experience sexual harassment in the workplace, don't suffer in silence and make sure you speak to someone who can solve the problem. They will listen and they know how to help you. Do it for yourself and your colleagues.
Our factory meal program feeds more than 5,000 people every day.
អ្នកដែលធ្វើការនៅក្នុងរោងចក្រនៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាភាគច្រើនគឺជាស្ត្រីហើយស្ត្រីជាច្រើនគឺគាត់មិនបានទទួលទានអាហារដែលមានជាតិដែកគ្រប់គ្រាន់នោះទេដោយសារកង្វះជាតិដែកនៅក្នុងអាហារមិនបានគ្រប់គ្រាន់ធ្វើឲ្យស្ត្រីភាគច្រើនគាត់ឈឺក្បាលអស់កម្លាំង
One of the critical concerns that we have with a large population of women workers is their general health and their well-being in the factories. So nutrition's been a really important consideration for us.
គោលដៅចម្បងរបស់ពួកយើងគឺចង់ពង្រឹងផ្នែកសុខភាពនិងការផលិត
In a tight labour market as we have here in Cambodia, it's absolutely an advantage for the factories to provide meals, whether they're breakfasts or lunches.
រឿងដំបូងដែលពួកយើងបានធ្វើនោះគឺចាំបាច់ត្រូវរកវិធីល្អដើម្បីធ្វើវាហើយដំណោះស្រាយដ៏ល្អសម្រាប់ពួកយើងនោះគឺទី1ត្រូវធ្វើផ្ទះបាយមួយទី2គឺត្រូវរើសបុគ្គលិកដែលមានជំនាញក្នុងការចម្អិនដើម្បីចម្អិនអាហារជូនកម្មករពួកយើងក៏មានការព្រួយបារម្ភផងដែរចំពោះកម្មករមួយចំនួនដែលគាត់មិនពេញចិត្តទៅលើអាហារដែលពួកយើងបានចម្អិនឲ្យពួកគាត់ដូច្នេះហើយពួកគាត់មានការត្អូញត្អែជាច្រើនហើយក៏អាចបណ្ដាលឲ្យទៅជាមានការកុតកម្មដូច្នេះនេះជាហេតុផលមួយដែលពួកយើងបានបង្កើតសមាជិកគ្រប់គ្រងចំណីអាហារ
ពួកយើងទាំងអស់គ្នាគឺជាកម្មករនៅក្នុងរោងចក្រហើយក៏ជាតំណាងសហជីពផងដែរពួកយើងបាននិយាយគ្នាទៅកាន់មិត្តភ័ក្តិនិងបដូរយោបល់គ្នាទៅវិញទៅមកទាក់ទងនឹងអាហារហើយបើសិនបើពួកយើងមានបញ្ហាជាមួយនឹងអាហារយើងអាចផ្ដល់ព័ត៌មានឬក៏រាយការណ៍ទៅកាន់អ្នកគ្រប់គ្រងរបស់ពួកយើង
We go through over 700 kilograms of rice a day.
អាហារថ្ងៃត្រង់របស់ពួកយើងជាធម្មតាបាយនិងសម្លហើយពួកយើងអាចញ៉ាំនៅអ្វីដែលពួកយើងអាចញ៉ាំបានហើយម្យ៉ាងវិញទៀតធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំអាចសន្សំលុយបានច្រើនព្រោះថាជារៀងរាល់ថ្ងៃពេលចំណាយទៅលើអាហារថ្ងៃត្រង់ខ្ញុំមិនបាច់ចំណាយប្រាក់ទិញឡើយហើយខ្ញុំអាចញ៉ាំអាហារបានតែគ្រប់គ្រាន់ព្រោះវាមិនកំណត់បរិមាណឡើយ
I think there are real benefits for Cambodian suppliers to adopt the meal provision services because that really is both supporting their productivity as companies but also directly the workers' health and well-being.
កម្មកររបស់យើងភាគច្រើនរស់នៅឆ្ងាយពីរោងចក្រអាហារប្រកបដោយជីវជាតិគ្រប់គ្រាន់និងឥតគិតថ្លៃជួយពួកគេសន្សំសំចៃលុយនិងសុខភាពល្អពួកយើងមិនមានផ្ទះបាយទេប៉ុន្តែពួកយើងមានកន្លែងសម្រាប់ឲ្យកម្មករហូបអាហារយើងបានកំងម្ហូបអាហារពីអ្នកផ្គត់ផ្គង់នៅជិតរោងចក្រហើយអាហារទាំងអស់នោះត្រូវបានចម្អិននៅក្រៅរោងចក្រកម្មករទទួលបានបាយមួយប្រអប់ជាមួយនឹងម្ហូបដែលមានសាច់និងបន្លែយើងបានលើកការធ្វើឲ្យជាច្រើនពីរសជាតិអាហារដែលយើងបានទិញពីអ្នកផ្គត់ផ្គង់ដំបូងដូច្នេះហើយទៅបានជាយើងផ្លាស់ប្ដូរអ្នកផ្គត់ផ្គង់ពួកយើងពិតជារីករាយខ្លាំងណាស់ចំពោះលទ្ធផលនៃការផ្ដល់អាហារនេះចាប់តាំងពីយើងបង្កើតកម្មវិធីនេះមកកម្មករដែលសិនច្បាប់ឈឺមានតិចជាងមុនហើយកម្មករក៏បន្តធ្វើការជាមួយយើងបានយូរអង្វែង
One of our major footwear factories established a canteen. They were challenged by labor shortages. The next day after they established a canteen, they had a queue of 400 people looking for work. So if you really look at the economic returns from providing food and the benefit for the workers, it really is a win-win.
ការទទួលទានអាហារប្រកបដោយគុណភាពពិតជាធ្វើឲ្យសុខភាពកាន់តែប្រសើរ
I have to be honest, At first, I was really doubtful offering the food to our workers. I thought we'd have too many headaches. But it's worked out so well for us that I wish we'd done it earlier.
Miền Cam có lớp bị buôn phèn nè, cầm phong ôm ra cá nông xa cam cắt đề nông bay trường nơi bờ tây Campuchia.
ពួកយើងភាគច្រើនគឺជាស្ត្រីវាអាចជាការចដន្យថាអ្វីដែលអ្នកកំពុងស្លៀកពាក់គឺផលិតដោយពួកយើងគឺជាផ្នែកមួយដ៏សំខាន់នៃសេដ្ឋកិច្ចប្រទេសកម្ពុជាការងាររបស់ពួកយើងផ្ដល់នូវចំណូល $4,000 លានក្នុងមួយឆ្នាំសម្រាប់ប្រទេសកម្ពុជាហើយវាជួយផ្គត់ផ្គង់សមាជិកក្នុងគ្រួសារយើងរហូតដល់ 2 លាននាក់
Our buyers are interested in good labor practices.
And so are we.
We work hard to improve the lives of our workers.
We do this by cooperating with Better Factories Cambodia.
We are Better Factories Cambodia.
We work with government, unions, workers, employers, and international buyers.
We monitor factories.
We provide consultation and advisory services. We train management and workers.
We know that good working conditions are good for business. With the help of Better Factories Cambodia's expertise,
we are finding solutions. Together, we are working hard. ដើម្បីឧស្សាហកម្មកាត់ដេរនិងស្បែកជើងរបស់ប្រទេសកម្ពុជា
for workers and for the Cambodian people. For the Cambodian people.
ដើម្បីប្រជាជនកម្ពុជា
Worker, helper, auntie, maid. How do you see your domestic worker? A new study by the ILO examines how public attitudes towards migrant domestic workers affects the working conditions they experience. The study found that in the Thai media, migrant workers are often associated with crime and illegality. This negative portrayal in the media influences employers' perceptions of migrant domestic workers.
She inspected me every month. Once a month, she searched my bag and my body, touched here and there to see if something was stolen before I left the house. Every time I had my monthly day off, I felt sad.
Yet despite this treatment, many Thai employers say they consider domestic workers to be part of the family. Some domestic workers confirm this positive relationship.
They treated me well, better than my own parents. They gave me love.
But being part of the family can also have negative effects.
They say if they gave me a high salary, it won't be a family anymore.
The family relationship can be applied selectively by the employer or withdrawn completely.
I love the baby so much. I fear that if I answer my employer back, I will not be able to see the baby again.
And sometimes being seen as a part of the family actually means accepting worse conditions than in other jobs.
I heard about minimum wage, day off, processing the immigration card, and health checkup. So I told them jokingly about day off. "Meh, you have to give me 3 to 4 days off a month." She laughed, and that's it.
Migrant domestic workers often work excessive hours, especially if they care for children or the elderly. Many do not get their weekly rest day, although this has been required by Thai law since 2012. Thailand needs migrant domestic workers to care for our homes, families, and communities. However, attitudes need to change so that the idea that domestic workers are part of the family does not undermine their fundamental right to decent work.
Work of equal value is a very important issue for the Swiss government. It's a question of justice towards women. It's also a question of a fair competition between companies. It can be accepted that companies which don't pay in a fair manner women have an advantage against the companies which respect the Equal Pay Act. And it's also very important for families because we see that in Switzerland some families are at risk of poverty. So it's very important that both members of a family get the right pay. And also it's an issue at not only at short term but also at long term, because we see that the pensions, the retirement pensions, are going to be affected. So it's a very bright issue. That's why our government has decided to engage itself in this issue. So first, we have good statistics. It's very important to have good statistics in order to know in what direction we are heading. And then we have developed a tool which is called Logib. It's a tool for companies to make self-analysis. It's very important that companies make the analysis. We have observed in Switzerland that a lot of companies don't know exactly what the situation of gender pay is. So they have to make the analysis. We also have noted that companies are pretty open to make the analysis, but they need a tool which is not too complicated to use. So that's why we have developed a tool. Then in the context of public procurement, we can make controls. Again, it's about fair competition. It cannot be accepted that a company gets a public procurement and doesn't respect the law about gender equal pay. And then we have also a charter. It's a very important charter for equal pay in the public sector. The public sector has to show the way. It's important that it shows that it respects equal pay, and then we can also ask that the private sector goes into the same direction. The first most important measure is a good education, I would say, but it's the case in Switzerland. And also women have a good education. We still say there is a gender pay gap. That's why we need first the law. We need a law which states very clearly that gender equal pay is not nice to have. It's a basic human right and economic right. And then also we need tools. We need pragmatic tools. I think it's very important. It helps the whole issue. Equal pay is a very important issue. It belongs to our constitution. We have a provision in our own constitution about equal pay between men and women for equal work or work of equal value. So it's a very important value for us, and our companies work not only in Switzerland but work all around the world. So it's important that there also globally there is a fair competition between companies, and that's why our government is engaging itself. It's about fair competition and also about justice.
Across the globe, women earn less than men for the same job or similar work, as well as for work of equal value. And this explains also why the gender pay gap in industrialized countries as well as in developing countries continues to remain so stubbornly high. This is the reason why member states have decided to join forces with a view to achieving equal pay for work of equal value by the year 2030, which is indeed a very bold and ambitious goal. It's a matter, of course, of justice, of fairness, and if women's time continues to be valued less than men's time, we'll never achieve gender equality at work, but also in society at large. There are also very, very compelling economic reasons for making equal pay and for work of equal value a reality. We know that we need more women to join and remain in the labor market for economies to grow. I mean, in the context of rapid aging of societies, we need to get all underrepresented groups into the labor market. A second important economic reason is that we know that if we give more money to women today, this will reduce the likelihood that tomorrow they will live in poverty, especially when we are talking of women in low-paid jobs. And last but not least, we know that women have different consumption patterns than men, and usually they tend to spend more money into the health and education of their children. And therefore, I mean, there are plenty of positive social and economic ramifications that would originate from equal pay for work of equal value. EPIC is indeed an attempt of responding to the very ambitious goals set by the 2030 agenda in an equally bold manner. So it's a multi-stakeholder alliance which brings together.
Remember the wow? All right, let's wow together. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that is a very long wow. All right. Before we go to the representative of each group, can we have maybe just 1 or 2 people from each of the group, not to make any summarize or conclusion, just an expression or subject that you talk about, and what did you have as a emerging wow or aha moment in your group? Somebody from the stakeholder? We have a mic somewhere. Is there any expression you want to share with us? Can we have a mic, please? Not yet.
So not to present, but just to say a very spirited discussion, more at a sort of a higher level, and all this business about 6 to 12 months, no way, tomorrow. As of tomorrow, you know, we're all getting on planes and going to workplaces, so there's no excuse to think about it for 6 months. That was a pretty easy one, speaking out, but I'll let the rest of the group present more formally. I just think it was a really interesting mixed group, development agencies, programs, big think tanks, so, you know, quite a high level thoughts about what should happen.
Thank you. Any other want to share some thought on your group discussion? We just had one from the stakeholder. Yes, Madam?
So I'm from workers group, and I saw the commitment on the faces of all the participants, the commitment to share the learnings from this conference and organizing more women in more geographical areas, digitization, policy advocacy. These are the main areas that we discussed with the confidence and commitment.
And you discussed all of that in 30 minutes? Wow.
employers and workers' organizations, enterprises, academia, as well as other actors of civil society. Its goal is to try to accelerate the pace of change on the ground, to engage in concerted action in order to move and progress towards that target more quickly. It will promote peer-to-peer exchanges on what measures, what policies at the workplace or nationally may work best and why. It will also disseminate, identify and disseminate good practices around the world and for different sectors. It will also try to improve the collection and analysis of relevant statistics. This initiative is being driven by 3 international organizations. This is a very good illustration of one UN plus, I would say, because indeed we have the ILO, UN Women and OECD. These are 3 organizations that have very distinct constituencies and mandates, which are nonetheless very complementary.
Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Prihanani from Confederation of Indonesia Trade Union. I would like to express my wow because I could find many wow during our 2 days meeting, and thank you for inviting us as workers representative in the full stakeholder workshop here. And this is very important workshop for us that we know that we already work with the increasing the women capacity in our region and in our national center. For the 2 days discussion, we have many input in the women issues and many challenges and big challenges, of course, in the future of work for the women, especially in the digitalization and in the STEM issues. The woman is very less involvement, is based on our discussion yesterday. But we have a discussion about key points concluded by the workers. The first one is organizing the women workers. The trade union density is very low. Individual contracts and vulnerable forms of the employment are seen everywhere, hence the need to protect our women in the workplace. Increasing the participation in the trainings, meetings, both local level and international. Yesterday we saw the less statistic of women, not so many women involved in the ILC meeting yearly, which we need to change and improve. And after this meeting, we hope that the next ILC meeting, we could achieve at least 30% women attend in the ILC meeting, because this year is very important and crucial discussion about the GBV. So let's be gather in the ILC meeting to promote the women rights through the discussion in the GBV in the ILO meeting this year. The third is women leadership. Still less women leadership in the trade union and in the many kind of issues in the country, that visibility of women in the leadership are, we supporting, encourage women that to be leaders. And how we design the program for the women workers, the strategies, do we have regular trainings specific for women workers, negotiation skills, soft skills, and like speaker already mentioned in the panels before on the today's discussion. And for the care economists, we engage men and society as partners to adopt the change towards the culture, but the attitudes towards women. And also STEM promotion as a response technology driven of the future of work. And because now we also have opportunity to have a recommendation, and hope our recommendation could be adopted and could be heard by the ILO and all of stakeholders here. We, the group of the workers, has some recommendation. The first one is continue promotion and ratification and enforcement of ILO convention. Conventions such as the right of organized, freedom of association, gender-related convention, maternity convention, is very less country to have ratified that convention. So also in the domestic workers convention. And then strengthen the platforms existing within the ILO framework, such as the tripartite forums, where employers, government, and the workers together on the common issues. And then genuine social dialogue is also critical. I would like ILO to ensure the government, employers, and also workers are working and talking together to improve the gender statistic for our future women workers. Not only just we have planning for tripartite meeting in the country just for the share information, but no conclusion, no discussion, no equal discussion. So we would like ILO to ensure that we have a good discussion and good result of this tripartite meeting. So this way ILO can facilitate the good policies and its development. And the last one is we ask ILO to continue support us in the capacity building of women and leadership, and being a good representative organization by the country-specific program in each country. This is all of our recommendation from the workers' representative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we now give the microphone to the representative from the employer, please? Oh, can we have her notes, please? Sorry. Yeah, we grabbed you too quickly. And after that will be the stakeholders, and then the government, and then Ms. Tomoko will make a conclusion. Just when we have a few minutes, you might notice an evaluation form on your table, and this is for you to please fill it in for us so that we can improve the organization part later. Not now, I'm just taking opportunity to inform you that we have evaluation form on the table. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Shahana and I am from Pakistan. I'd like to thank my group for giving me the opportunity to present this on behalf of employers. The first question was, what can I do over the next 6 to 12 months as an individual in my own capacity to make the future of work better for women? We have 5 recommendations in this. That is, each one of us will try to raise the issue whenever possible, wherever possible. Share information with colleagues. Could be male colleagues and could be female colleagues. Include more women in senior management. It is possible within our own sphere of activities. Then we will try to do that in the next 6 to 12 months. Arrange training programs. That is, since employers, organizations, they all have their own training programs, we will also try to convince our employer members to have more programs for women. Then use our own personal influence whenever and wherever possible to improve gender issues. The second question was, what can my organization do for women in future of work within the next 1 year to 3 years? Now we'll try to work on flexible work guidelines for employers. That is, the employers organization will try to have an advocacy session on this for the member companies. Then employers can also work on doing a TNA, training need analysis, for actual assessment of training for 1 to 2 years, for example, on leadership training. For example, also on legal rights of women. For example, on flexible working hours, etc. So without doing a training need analysis, we cannot make a long-term training program for women. Advocacy and lobbying for affirmative actions within employer groups and outside. Outside means working with the government and also working with the workers and unionized staff. Then our fourth recommendation is to create networking groups. That means that networking groups have to be diverse. It has to have men and women, because single-handedly only female groups don't work very well. That has been our experience. We would like to create more and better opportunities of work inside the organization. Then our last recommendation is to make a platform for women for sharing experience. It's always good to share information and good and best management practices within a certain group. Let's say for engineers, female engineers or female doctors, so they can share information, and we would like to have more groups within the employer organizations. That's all. The third question was, is there something we do together, partnership for a better future for women at work within the next 1 to 3 years? This is a difficult task, but we would like to address it, and we have 4 recommendations. First one is reform labor legislation on gender discrimination issues. In many countries, the labor legislation is not up to the mark, and it is the duty of the employer organizations to bring these issues to the knowledge of the government, and also to work within their own board to resolve such issues when they are coming. Employers' organizations normally have a legal panel within their own premises. The second recommendation is to have skill-based training to combat the new and upcoming challenges. We know that there is a lot of digitalization, and there is going to be automation in companies and robotics and so on. So we have to prepare the workforce, as such a generally total workforce, but especially women workforce, because they are more amicable to fall prey to, getting out of the job easily. So we have to prepare them. The third recommendation is academic liaison to prepare graduates for new job markets. Now, academic liaison is getting more into practice, and the employers would like to have graduates coming out of the universities who are just ready for the job. Normally, there is a mismatch that the theory does not conform to the practicals. And when the graduates enter the job market, they have to learn many things anew. So we would like to have academic liaison with the universities and technical institutes, so that when the job market needs them, they come straight away and get on to the job straight away. Our fourth recommendation is tripartite mentoring for upcoming leaders. We'd like to have more female leaders on the board, in senior management and in the middle management. And for that, we would like to have more training programs based on the TNA analysis and based on the requirements of our corporate members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and now we move directly to the... Oh, you need the chart as well? Sure, either way you want.
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manohara Khadka. I come from Nepal. I work for Embassy of Switzerland and Swiss Development Cooperation, Nepal. I also would like to thank ILO and DFAT for giving me opportunity to participate in this conference as a researcher. I learned many things about the job and women in job. In our group, we have a very much evolving discussion that what are our key messages, take-home messages. We like to share in our group that, as my colleague said, that we're from different discipline, our experience coming from research background and also development agency and other. We come up, we like to share our thought, like what can I do going back? I will start from tomorrow. We commit ourselves that we start from tomorrow mentoring and sponsoring young women and share with them our own experience of discrimination, inequality, and also there are a lot of issues around women entering into the job. We will share with this and also speak out. This is our strategy. And support women. We have to support women at all levels with a different experience and different level. And second is that within the 1 and 2, 3 years, what we do in our organization, we discussed that we have to continue or give or focus or give practice affirmative action in order to have more women in a workplace. It means that when we hire, we follow the affirmative action. For example, in Nepal, Swiss Embassy is very much ahead in this. We have at least strategic criteria. There should be at least 40% women in our organization. And now we have women, at least 47% workforce are women coming from different experience and background. And we also consider that targeted development for women is another strategy we have to take on and fight stereotype and work on women 20s, women 7s policy recommendation we come up within the 6 years. The question related to the third recommendation, main recommendation is that ILO tripartite constituency region-wide training program for women leader. Women leader, mentor, sponsored by men and women champion. We had that recommendation. And this ILO tripartite constituency region-wise workshop training is for 3 main objectives. One is share relevant research, grow pipeline to meet ILO constituency commitment, and third is create new network connection across constituencies and gender. Another, our recommendation would be encourage better collaboration across Bretton Woods, is a UN system, World Bank, and other IMF. This is network establishment. And third is research, because we also learned that still the evidence policy is very key. But what kind of evidence and which type of knowledge we generate, and we focus on research on gender dimension of trade and open door for women. Women-run business. It's more on trade and women. This is how our concluding remark.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much. Can we now have Ms. Margaret from the representative of the government group to also give us a summary of the discussion?
Thank you. We had quite a good discussion within the government group, and I'll just stick to the very high points given the time of day. But I think there was commitment amongst all individuals that the real issue that we have to go back with is one around changing mindsets. And so a lot of the strategies that people mentioned were things that would address this. And they were things like being role models in the workplace, advocating for change wherever possible, providing feedback on this conference, so not just benefiting from the conference themselves, but going back and sharing the learnings with other colleagues in the workplace. One member committed to do a presentation on what was discussed, for example, and to send around some of the papers, really about raising awareness and sharing data and information. It was also critical that people understood, there was a bit of talk about the business case, and you need to get data and evidence out when discussing, proving a business case. So where there is data, we should make that available to our colleagues. So they were some of the individual commitments. In terms of the organisation, there was talk about policies, programs and legislation, and really the thing that we talked about, which was critical, was working in partnership, and this conference is an example of bringing all of the players together with different perspectives. We can do that in the workplace. We need to get the views of employers, of labour organisations, of the ILO, of NGOs. There's many partners that have a stake in this, and we can work with them. We also talked about allocating funding to fix any issues. So where there are a lack of incentives for women, we could use our funding to reallocate and reprioritise. Finally, in terms of how we could take it forward collectively, we talked about networking and remaining connected after the conference. We're all joined together in some way via the ILO anyway, and we can keep the momentum going. This is a good opportunity for us to share best practice, to replicate what others are doing, to learn from others. And we can share such information through technical transfer and tech platforms. We don't need to get together as a group as such. We can do it virtually. We can also use our links to the ILO, and for example, when we go to things like the governing body and the ILC, we can use our positions there to make sure that gender is on the agenda and considered. So when we're making statements, we can feed gender into that and seek to influence in that way. Also, the makeup of who we send to those meetings is very important. So they were probably the highlights from the group, and I just wanted to take the opportunity now, while having the microphone, before handing to Tomoko, to do a couple of very quick thank yous, because we're coming right to the end of 2 very successful days, and I just wanted to put a couple of acknowledgements on the record. So firstly, thank you everyone for coming. We've had a great turnout and really good contributions by everyone, and it's made for a very, very useful conference. These things don't come together easily. There's many months in the lead up, months of work, and some of the key workers are here now, probably hiding a little bit behind the scenes. I wanted to take the opportunity to draw them out from that, and perhaps I just would like to acknowledge some of the key organisers, and perhaps if they could stand up if they haven't gone into hiding. So I'd just like to particularly say thank you to Joni Simpson, who's the Senior Gender Specialist, ILO Bangkok. Perhaps if Joni could stand up. Also Aya Matsua, ILO New Delhi. Shristi Lamsal, the Project Logistics Coordinator. And so I think they would be Team ILO or Team Asia. The Australian end, I just wanted to quickly acknowledge 3 staff who have worked particularly hard. One is not here, 2 are. So Kristen Letts, Beck Duncan, and Ria Kuravilla. And of course we've had very strong support from senior staff both at the ILO and the Department of Jobs and Small Business, so thank you very much for the senior support as well. I'll leave it there and hand over to Tomoko for the real wrap-up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those excellent summaries of the very active discussions. I'd like to start by coming back to the context of this meeting. As you know, the theme is the future, women and future of work. And the background of this is, as you have heard, that we have a centenary initiatives, 7 of them. 2 of them are Future of Work Initiative and Women at Work Initiative, 2 of them amongst the 7. And Future of Work was a particularly important driver for the centenary initiative. So we had a year-long or over year-long national dialogue on future of work. Over 100 member states engaged throughout the last almost 18 months now in response to the call by the Director General. Many of the member states in our region, Asia and the Pacific, most of your countries had a tripartite dialogue on future of work. And we realized that during that, gender issues are quite invisible. Some had a good gender sensitivity, but largely speaking, we did not see many addressing gender sensitivity very visibly. So we thought combining at this stage future of work and gender at work, 2 of these very important centenary initiatives, and put this as the theme of this gathering would be a great idea to set the tone for 2018, which is the 1 year before we come to really a climax of centenary 2019. And throughout the year, there will be a lot of centenary related activities will be held globally as well as in this region. And I hope you would agree with me that it was a great idea, indeed, that we set the tone and had a great discussion, and we will carry this momentum throughout 2019 and then towards 2019, of course, beyond. I have a lot of takeaways with me, but since we have heard, and then I'm sure individually you have a lot of takeaway in your mind, the reflections on your plane and when you're back. So I will not repeat that. But I'd like to just trying to respond those 3 questions that you have discussed. As ILO, for example, it is really, this is a continuum of our effort. One of the examples that I can cite is that there was a mentioning of the, this year's ILC, because it's a women, violence against women, gender issues are very taking a center stage. Let's aim at really coming to the increased participation of the female delegates. ILC is annual labor ministers meeting. So every year, June, there will be over 5,000 sometimes gathering. But every 4 years, or every year, there is a regional labor ministers meeting as well, which is which can be nicknamed as like a mini ILC, because it's region by region. And for example, last year was Europe turn. This year is a Latin America turn. December 2016 was Asia and the Pacific turn. And December 2016, we had the Asia and the Pacific Regional Conference of the Labor Ministers. And this was shortly after I took up my assignment, and I was told that the percentage of the female delegates in this region is the lowest, lower than Europe, lower than Latin America, lower than Africa region. So we took up the challenge to look at this more closely and advocate. Indeed, it was 11% of the delegates were female, for those who have voting rights. This is the previous APRM. And 14 countries came as all male delegates. So we started by changing the invitation letters content and encouraging them, prepare the infographics, talk to the people, encouraged, a really consistent effort being made. And come December 2016, we had doubled the delegation, still lower, but still we doubled the female delegates who has the voting rights. And we halved the all-male delegation. So 7 of them came still, and I'm still talking to them, aiming at ILC as well as the next regional meeting, which will be in 2020. So we know that, as you have heard, when you encourage them, oh, there's no women, oh, no, we don't have a qualified, all these excuses came. But we know we can find the qualified women. We know the discussion can be very much more vibrant when you have a diversity in the delegates. So this was December 2016, and all along, as I mentioned, that every possible opportunity we are finding the ways of mainstreaming gender issues into our effort. And this is a kickstart. This event is a kickstart of the effort by the member states in the region and ILO regional office in contributing towards the momentum and dynamics of the centenary celebratory mode substantively. And this is going to continue. We will be together with the Australian government. We were preparing a report. The recommendations and the messages of this 2-day conference will be incorporated, and we are aiming at March, I think, to launch that study and a report on the same theme. We are talking to ASEAN labor ministers on the future of work, Women at Work, and other centenary initiatives. We are talking to, we are reaching out ADB, we are reaching out SARC. So organizationally, ILO taking maximum advantage of the centenary year and the centenary initiative, including the Women at Work initiative. We were making the effort in that along that line. So this is ILO. And the partnership, we have heard a number of comments and the contributions and suggestions, how important it is we come together. No one organization or no one coalition. It has to be a coalition of coalitions. So it has to be really a kind of movement. We come together. We had a business world with employers, trade unions. W20 initiative was mentioned. Very, very important high-level political discussion is there. You have heard that tonight the equal pay initiative and coalition will be launched. So the partnership is very, very important. Us here is one group. I just wanted to mention that we have now over 120 of us here, representing 22 countries, 17 tripartite delegations. In fact, 140 participants we were counting. And I'm very pleased to say that our effort to go online have now resulted in 12,000 connections. I can say 12,000 people because this is maybe the person who go online and then watched us or listened to us and then came back today, maybe counted again, because there's no way of distinguish one person, so on. So I would say 12,000 connections, but isn't that a great connections? And by applause, I would I acknowledge that you would agree that this is a great start of the partnership. What we also heard in terms of the tackling the gender equality and women empowerment, achieving the social justice, is really a long time struggle. It doesn't happen overnight. In fact, almost we are making a history. I think tide is turning, and we were really seeing at least world of work is the way that we were moving the debate, putting the women at work issues related gender equality, women empowerment at the center stage of the centenary discussion. I think we were part of the history being made as a one page of the 100 years of history of ILO. And I'm very proud, I'm sure you are also, be part of that as history. So coming to the individually, personally, what do we do? I would like to share, I think with some of you I have shared, because it's such a difficult. Sometimes you have to speak up, even if you were told you were not supposed to. You have to stand up, even if you're not supposed to. You have to change and persist, even if they say, no, that's not what we usually do. Change requires courage. Change requires bold movement. And almost sometimes, I'm sure you would agree, rebellious spirit, right? So the quote I always have that's in mind, that's I think one of the workshops that I shared, is coming from Eleanor Roosevelt. And it goes, well-behaved women rarely make history. So my personal pledge is, if necessary, I will misbehave. And I said this in front of my boss, DDG. But I said, if necessary. I think there are times that we need to diplomatically, according to the procedures, but insist. So a little bit the most of the part, because the last part of my conclusion is the appreciation and thank you. And thank you very much for individually recognize those who have really worked so hard, months after months, in preparing for this a great conference and great gathering of like-minded people. That's been great. I would like to add also the MC. Excellent job, young lady, who she also confessed that she's misbehaving, right? Not doing the housework as she was told. And of course, the whole back of there, the whole team, organizational team in the secretariat, always they're sitting in the back, but we know without those people, we would not have the right on time, the proceedings and lights and microphones and those speedos and so on. So thank you very much. I would like to, of course, make sure that I will, on the record, thank the government of Australia and without that collaborative. It's not really financial or anything, it's really the spirit and encouragement and recognizing that coming together we can make a difference. I think that spirit is very important. And thank you very much. And we continue, as I mentioned, March is one of the milestones that we will make again. And I do hope that the participants will join us and find a way of making optimal use of the centenary preparatory year, I would call it, and going into the 2019 with a great spirit. Talking about centenary year, Mr. Greg Vines, the DGG, is the chair of the task force within our organization. The task force coordinating all the work centering around what we call ILO 2019. So it was, thank you very much, Greg, to be here. ILC is in his portfolio also. And so many of the recommendations that we made and pledges we made really will come to his desk, and he has now heard firsthand our recommendations, our sentiment, and our commitment. And he himself has stood in front of the camera and pledged. So this is a great start for me, for our region, having a great allies in headquarters in further advancing what you recommended, what you pledged, and what you asked us to do. And we will make the best optimal effort along those lines. And join us virtually, and I do hope that there will be some other ways seeing you in person. And thank you very much. Those who are traveling, either tonight, tomorrow, safe journey, and thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much, all of our representatives, and thank you very much, our regional director. So I have here in my notes, one of the job I have to do at the end is thanking everyone, but two of our speakers already done that, so I crossed that out. So I would like to just thank you all again, and if you may, you can now proceed to your table, and please also fill in our evaluation form. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Well, we're almost at the very end of our program, but I hope you all have in schedule that we are having dinner together at 6 o'clock. Yeah? All right, good. Once again, we have an evaluation on your table. If you can please take a very short time, few seconds to just fill that in, and you can...
In Thailand, there are around 500,000 documented migrant workers in construction. An estimated 40% are women. They come mostly from Myanmar and Cambodia in search of better work and decent pay.
I'm just here to earn money in order to support my family. My whole family are farmers. I was a farmer, but the income does not cover for the whole family.
A recent ILO study reveals that migrant women have different experiences than men they work alongside. Working conditions often fall far short of expectations and short of Thai minimum standards. Many feel that their identities as migrant workers and as women impact on how they are treated. Pay was the most important concern for women migrant workers. The study revealed that 31 out of 42 women migrant workers interviewed were paid below the minimum wage for Thailand, less than 300 Thai baht per day. Migrant women reported being paid less than men, even if they had more experience. Even migrant workers who are considered skilled received just over the national minimum wage, while all Thai workers interviewed reported receiving over the national minimum wage, and with skills are able to move up the wage ladder. Some of the discrimination faced by migrant women construction workers is directly related to the fact that they are women. Employers regularly dismiss pregnant women, and no woman had received maternity pay or leave.
I will not get paid if I'm pregnant. That's why I use birth control pills. I have to pay for everything.